Hey everybody, and welcome to MadameStitch and Busy Crochet. We are here this morning to talk about the Mitered Square, the first release in our Memories Blanket Crochet Along. In case you don't know us, and by now you should because we've been in your faces a lot lately. I'm Deb of MadameStitch, and this is my cohort in crime.
Busy crochet. Thanks for joining us.
We are so excited about this crochet along because we have spent the last few months designing and writing and photographing and making, and now it's your turn. So we're going to take a moment today to just talk about the mitered square because our job is to make it as easy as possible for you to make your squares. So before we get into the discussion about the mitered square, I want to remind you that when a square is released, you're making 8 of them. And in this case, the mitered square is done in 3 different colors. You can choose any color combination that you want. I chose one color combination, Biz chose another. And I did not make all of them in the same color. So when you look at my blanket, I don't know if you can see it very well. You can't see the squares behind me, but they're all different color combinations, whatever the spirit moved me to do that particular moment. Oh, there's
I've got mine
Biz's.
here. Yeah. So they're all different.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I love the way that works out. All right. So Biz and I are going to talk a little bit about how this came about, what the square is like, and we're going to give you some tips and tricks to make it your own. So, what would you like me to talk about first, Biz?
Well, first, let's talk about, your love of the granny stitch. And this is definitely a signature style for you. What made you want to go kind of that off route? Because we're not talking about a normal granny square here.
We are not. Okay, so this comes from 2 different places. I've always been fascinated with the mitered square. Basically, a mitered square starts from the center out, but it's different from corner to corner in that you're taking a center square, which you can see right here. You take that center square and you work in 2-sided rows, starting here and working over that way to create the square out. Whereas in corner to corner, you're working in rows on the diagonal. This is not the same thing. It's middle square, work along 2 edges to build the square out, and then the final round or 2 goes all the way around in a traditional round to kind of complete the square. And I love the look of a mitered square. I don't know if you've ever seen a blanket or a work that looks like an optical illusion.
Yeah.
The mitered square is usually the square that they use for that, a granny square. Now you can use any stitch you want for a mitered square, but of course, because granny stitch is my heart, that's
Yeah.
the one I used for my mitered square. So I've adapted
Yeah.
it and this is a pretty common square. You can find these all over the place. I've adapted it for our use here today.
Well, and having made obviously a bunch of these, the pattern is very simple to follow, and you have really great directions in there. You're very precise about. You say put it in this spot. Where, so there shouldn't be any like major problems for people. Like this is a pretty basic, simple to follow pattern. And I'm just throwing that out there as just an extra. Um, for anybody who's like, oh well, gosh, it looks hard. I don't know that I'm gonna be able to do that. No, really, trust the pattern on this one.
Right, I would say that making the first one is going to be obviously the most challenging
Mhm,
because you're just trying to work out where all of the granny stitches
mhm,
are made.
mhm,
But like she said, I'm very specific. This is one of my tips. I'm very specific about where to work those stitches, where to
mhm,
start. For
mhm,
instance, when you start round 3, I will say, make, I forget what it is, but it might be something like, make a standing single crochet in the
mhm.
first stitch of round 2.
Right.
And if you just keep that square facing you, right
Yes.
side up, you'll
Mhm.
see exactly where that is. Just go back to the beginning of that round, put your first stitch there, and just make sure that your first and your last stitch on those two-sided rows end up in identical places
Mhm.
visually.
Okay, so I have seen some discussion on your Facebook page, not page, but group in your group. And if you're not a part of our Facebook groups, make sure that you are, because if you're watching this on YouTube, great. A lot of the activity for this Cal is going to be happening in our groups, though. And
Yes.
you're Madam Stitch Crochet Corner on Facebook, and
Yes.
I'm Busy Crochet Cal group. Um, so anyway, I did notice in your group that there was a question about using different weights, or and the reason I'm even asking that is, do you feel like there could be some different weights used with a larger hook and maybe blocked into the 5 inches, or what are your thoughts on that?
Gosh, it gets really difficult. I think in that case, you really just have to experiment. The entire
Mhm,
blanket is so dense with different stitches and techniques
mhm,
that
mhm.
it's really impossible for either one of us to say what a
Yeah.
different weight yarn would do with it. But as I suggested in the group, what you can do, we've listed gauges. All of my squares come out to be five
Mhm.
inches.
Yeah.
All of your stitch sections are based on a certain number of, I think it's single crochet and
Mhm,
rows per four
mhm,
inches. So you
mhm,
can make yourself gauge swatches and kind of do a
mhm.
little math to figure out how large or how small
Yep.
that difference will be.
Yeah.
I don't think DK weight with a larger hook is going to make a lot of difference,
Mhm.
but the blanket will be smaller, and there really isn't a way for you and I to adjust the stitch
No,
counts and that sort of thing
no.
to accommodate different weights. It's designed in worsted weight with
Yeah,
a certain number of stitches
yeah.
per row and that sort of thing, so we have to go with
Right, and
that.
that's a really, really great point for you to make, is that if you choose to use a different yarn, you're absolutely, I mean, like, this is your thing, but
Right,
just be aware you're not going to get the same size blanket. And our
right, and
blankets go
we
off by maybe an inch.
yeah, I mean, they ended up being the same width. They're a
Mhm,
slightly different in length, but
mhm.
I have the feeling that mine is a little bit longer just because my stitches tend to be a little bit higher.
Yeah.
So, it's just a personal style, but it didn't
Mhm.
affect the outcome of the blanket. It was very
Yeah,
close. So, that's the other thing we can make a point about is the gauge is great, but try to stay with 5-inch squares and
mhm.
then and then work those 135 stitches that you're going to see on Thursday
Yeah.
across the top of that strip that you're going to form with my mitered square today,
Mhm.
and just make sure that doesn't pull in tight or is too loose.
Yeah,
That will
yeah,
ensure that the stitch pattern coming up works.
yeah, yeah, agreed, agreed. Um, so I don't have your list. We didn't get a list of questions together.
Well,
But
I was just going to give some tips and tricks
yeah,
to
I
this
think that's a
square.
great idea. Let's one thing I really, really I want to just say about this square is this is a great place for you to start with busting your stash. Because a lot of us have those little bitty balls about so big that we don't want to throw away. We know we can use them for something, but they just end up accumulating. And I actually keep all of my little balls like that in a like one of those acrylic candy jars,
Yeah.
just because I don't know what else to do with them. But that's a great place for you to be able to take a lot of those little balls out and use them up, get them
Yeah.
into something.
The mitered square is perfect because you don't need much
No.
yardage for each round. And
Right.
because you can just choose and pick and choose as you go, just
Mhm.
pick up a ball and use it. And if you've gotten enough left over for another round, go for it. But you're right, it's a great place to
Yeah.
start using up those little teeny balls of leftovers.
Mhm. Yeah. Alrighty, so share some tips and tricks with us about this.
All right, darling. We already talked about where to put the first stitch of each round and all of that kind of stuff. So This particular design is
Mhm,
actually going to pull your square kind of off.
mhm.
Instead of being square, it's gonna pull
Cocks
it off a
itself,
little
yeah,
bit. Yeah, it's cocked. So you are going to have to block it. Now,
yeah,
I will say that even blocking might not solve all of that, but once
mhm,
you join them in a strip and you add the section on top and you add the section on the bottom, that will
mhm.
be section 5, section 1 and section 5. It will straighten itself out so that it doesn't
Mhm.
look cockeyed, but you definitely are going to need to block these. I
Yeah,
don't
and
know what
I
you did.
well, what I ended up doing is I was a little bass backwards, and I ended up putting it together in a strip and then blocking my whole strip because
You can do that too.
we're looking for 40 inches and 5 inches tall. Because
Yeah.
each one of them is 5 inches wide, so we're looking for a 40-inch width. So that's what I did with mine, and I know that you tweaked the pattern a little bit so it had a little bit less of that cock. Because when I
Mhm.
made it, I had almost diamonds. Mine were really bad.
Yeah.
So I had to block mine quite a bit, but even at that, like you said, when we came back and we put those ends on either side, it even if you do a light block, because I did a pretty hard one, but even if you did a light block, you could still feasibly look at that and that'll pretty much straighten itself out because you're going to be putting stabilizing stitches on either side of it.
Right. As I made the squares, I realized that in the last round where you're granny stitching around the whole thing,
Mhm,
that the corners typically would be 3 double crochet, chain 2 or 3, 3
mhm.
double crochet. But I changed the height of that to half double crochet, which then
Oh, okay.
that's how I tweaked it. So that round,
Mhm,
I think it's round 5, instead of using double crochets in the corners, I used
mhm.
half double crochets.
Gotcha.
Um, yeah, and that seemed to help the tilt.
Yeah.
And I've never seen that done in a mitered square before, so that is different. So there again, it looks like it's traditionally done, but to
Yeah.
keep it from being cockeyed, I've adjusted a little bit so
Mhm.
that it comes out as close to a square as possible.
Yeah, yeah. That's
Yes,
good.
I tweaked it. Um, let's see. We did that one. Just be aware, I've called all of these rounds. But rounds 2 and 4 are really partial rounds. They're really
Mhm.
rows. You're not gonna turn after any round or row in this particular square, but
Mhm.
I've called them rounds to avoid confusion. So, everything
Mhm.
is referred to as a round, but they really are 2 rounds 2 and 2, 3, and 4 are just working along 2 sides of the
Mhm.
square, so just be aware of that.
Mhm.
Um Pay close attention to where the stitches are worked in rounds 3 and 5, because you might be working around, like in round 5, to create that round all the way around the square. You may be working around a stitch rather than into a space. So
Yeah,
it's the
yeah.
same concept, it's just working around a stitch rather than a
Mhm.
chain 1 space or something.
Mhm.
And like I said, after you've made the first one, it should be obvious
Yeah, yeah.
and a little bit easier. You won't have to think quite as much, I think, about where things
Mhm.
go. But again, if you have any questions, pop into the Facebook group. If Biz
Mhm.
and I aren't available, someone else might be able to answer the question in
Mhm.
either one of our groups. So we're posting
Yeah.
this to both of our Facebook
Yeah,
groups.
you'll get support no matter which one you're in.
Yeah. But I think that's it.
Yeah.
If you can think of anything else, just let me know. But I think
No,
that's
just,
all we have to offer for this one.
yeah, everybody have fun. Just have
Yeah.
fun. Don't let any of it stress you out. And if I've always had people who were like, "I can't keep up." Don't worry about it. This isn't a
Yeah.
race. You do you, boo. So, just have fun making your squares. And really, this is about you diving into what you've got. Or if you want to purchase a pack or whatever you're doing, if you want to curate
Yeah.
this thing, go for it. But if you just want to make something that's like, I just need to get rid of some yarn, go diving, go find some stuff to pull up because all of the information is out there now. Your materials list is available
Mhm.
on both of our intro blog posts for the cal itself. There are links there for the patterns, etc. So, go do it. It's gonna be
Yeah,
good.
I would say bookmark that main Cal post for either one
Mhm,
of us or both of
mhm.
us. It doesn't really matter because we do write in a slightly different way and we have different
Oh, for
styles.
sure.
So choose the one that you like. Um, and all of the information is there. I mean, we'll do our very best to get the links in every single time. But
Yeah,
if we don't, if you're participating in the crochet along, be sure to bookmark that page.
yes.
And here's a tip. If you're visiting that main Cal post over and over again, you
Mhm.
need to clear your browser history or clear your cache because you may see an old version and go, well, she was supposed to post that link today and it's just
Yeah,
not there. Well, yeah, it's there. So just make sure
yeah.
that you clear that history or
And
whatever
sometimes
over and
just
over again.
refreshing that page once you're
Yeah,
on it
just
will help
refresh
you
the
do that.
page. Yep. But we are
One
here to
other
help.
yeah. I did have one other thought. I'm gonna see if it comes back. Doggone. Mm, Hopefully I'll remember.
We can post it in the comments for this particular live.
Yes, we can.
So
Yes, we can.
I know that's the nature of the live. We have a just enough of a delay that we're talking over each other sometimes, and then my brain in particular goes, "Well, that thought's gone. We're
Yeah,
out of here."
just like, I know it's there, it's, like, sitting right there, it's whatever,
Yeah,
and I'm
and as soon
sure
as we get off, we'll go, "Oh, that's what it is."
that's what it was, yeah. But it can't
All
be
right.
that like, I'll use the old adage, "It can't be that important or I would have remembered it," right? No, they're usually important. So,
Well, if you have joined us this morning and there are several people on with us, and I appreciate that, I'm so excited. Biz, we are
yes,
finally here, darling. The Cal has finally started and we are sharing
yes,
it with the world. We are so excited to have you
yes,
here.
mhm,
So enjoy the process,
yeah,
enjoy the beautiful colors, share
mhm,
your photos,
yes,
be
post in the
be
groups.
brave, be bold, don't hold
Mhm,
back. There is no stupid question. There is no
mhm,
square that doesn't look quite right. We love it all. So
mhm.
hang in there. We are here for you,
Yeah, and come back Thursday because 'cause we're gonna be here again Thursday, and we're gonna be talking about section 1. So,
which is
mm,
awesome. So
fun,
I
fun,
can't wait.
fun. Yes,
All right, we're
alright.
going to leave you for now and say goodbye, but we will see you in the Facebook groups. So from Debbie and from Biz, we
Hello,
say
hello.
so long for now.
Yes,
Bye.
bye. And that was it. Whoops.